Substitution is the last method that we're going to use to solving systems of equations. Substitution is where you solve for a variable and then substitute it into the other equation. So this method is good to use when one of the two variables has a coefficient of 1 in the two equations. So steps to follow. Step 1, you need to solve for one of the variables. Step 2, you need to plug the expression into the other equation in place of the variable. Then you need to solve. Plug the number in for one of the variables, and now it starts getting really confusing. So the best thing to do is just let me show you what to do. So in this example where I've got 2x plus 8y equals 24 and x minus 2y equals 0, because x has a coefficient of 1, this makes it a really good candidate for substitution. So the very first thing we're going to do is get the x by itself. So to solve for x, I'm just going to add 2y to both sides. Being that I'm adding 2y to 0, it just ends up being x equals 2y. What that means is that x is 2y. So everywhere I see an x, I can replace it with 2y. So I'm going to replace the x in the very first equation with the 2y, and I get 2 times 2y equals 8y, or plus 8y equals 24. So this creates an equation with only one variable in it. So 4y plus 8y equals 24, add those up by combining like terms. 12y equals 24. Solve for y by dividing by 12, so y equals 2. So now that I have one variable, I just go back and I plug it back in to an equation to figure it out. Well, the best one to plug it into is where I solved for x, because I can just plug in the y value, do the math, and then there's my x value. When I plug it in, x equals 4. So the solution I got was that x is 4 and y is 2, so it's the point 4, 2. As always, we have to go back and check our work. So here's the point 4, 2. I've got my 2x plus 8y equals 24 and x minus 2y equals 0. Pick either one of these to check your work. So I'm going to pick the first one, and I plug in 4 for x and 2 for y. 8 plus 16 equals 24. 24 equals 24, so that is the correct solution for our problem. So another example. 2x minus 5y equals 29. And x plus 4y equals 8. So I've got the x that has a coefficient of 1. That's what I want to get by itself. So to get x by itself, I subtract the 4y, and I get negative 4y plus 8 is the same thing as x. So I'm going to plug in that expression everywhere I see an x. I'm going to use parentheses. So once I plug it in, I've got to distribute the 2. Then I combine like terms, and I end up with y equals negative 1. Then I've got to plug that negative 1 back into where I had solved for x. So I get negative 4 times negative 1 plus 8. 4 plus 8 is 12. So my solution is 12, 1. Check my work by 12, negative 1, excuse me. Check my work by plugging in 12 for x and negative 1 for y, and sure enough, it works. Last example. This time I see the y has a coefficient of 1, so that's what I want to get by itself. So the very first thing I do is come over here and solve for y, and I get y equals x minus 1. I'm going to plug it back in over here, distribute my 2, combine like terms, solve for x. Use that negative 2 and plug it back in. So y equals negative 2 minus 1, y equals negative 3. So there's my solution. I can plug it back into one of our first equations to check our work, and sure enough, 2 minus 3 equals negative 1.